Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm your host, Amanda Lamb. In today's deep dive conversation with North Carolina Extension wildlife biologist Falyn Owens, we're talking about bears. This comes on the heels of two recent black bear sightings in Chapel Hill that have left some people wondering if bears are getting bolder or if increasing development is pushing them out of their natural habitats into more populated areas. Falyn, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So in the past few days, there were two bear sightings in neighborhoods off of Martin Luther King Boulevard in Chapel Hill. They were about half a mile apart, and there have been others in recent weeks. I know we reported a bear jumped over a fence at a Fayetteville woman's home. So what is going on here? Are bears more likely to come out at this time of year?
Certainly, in the central part of our state, this is pretty much the best time of year to get a chance to see a bear.
And when they come out of, the woods or the areas where they're living, what are they looking for?
So we have black bears in North Carolina, and that species of bear is pretty much always very food motivated. So they're pretty much anytime they're active and awake, they're looking for an easy meal.
And, you've got to wonder when you see a bear in a very populated area, a suburban area like Chapel Hill, are they getting bolder? In other words, are they less afraid of people than they were before? And also, obviously, we all know there's just so much development in the Triangle area. Is that kind of taking away from their habitats?
So the bears that we tend to see popping up or showing up in the central part of the state usually end up being younger, subadult, or sort of older juvenile bears. Oftentimes they're males, and usually the reason why they're seen wandering around in neighborhoods and urbanized areas is mostly because they're young and they're not quite sure where they're going, and they're mostly exploring to find food sources and to find a safe place to establish as their normal home range. But at that age, they're mostly just trying to figure out what they're doing.
Yeah, and I did read in a report online that this is kind of the time of year where the black male bears separate from their mothers.
Exactly. So this time of year, the females are just about to go into heat and ready to mate with a male in their area. And bears that were born the previous year, so now they're about a year old, they're no longer cubs, they need to not be around their mothers when she goes into estrus and she's ready to mate. It's dangerous for the young bears. And also, there is the risk that you have bears that are very closely related to one another, mating, which is not good for their gene pool. So the male bears especially get this instinct to just kind of get away. Mom kicks them out of their home territory that they've lived in for a year, and they don't really know where to go, but they know that they need to go far so that they can get far away from any female bears that they might be related to. And that's why yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's an interesting fact. I've never heard about that. Well, we will be back after the break, and we'll talk a little bit about tips, what you should do if you see a bear. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. So, Falyn, let's reset a little bit here and talk about where you're more likely to see a bear. I mean, you think of bears more in the western part of the state, right, in the mountains. Is it less likely to see a bear, for example, in central North Carolina or coastal North Carolina?
So we actually have more bears in the coast than we do in the mountains, but both sort of the eastern and western ends of the state, we have very robust bear populations. They're doing extremely well. It's not uncommon to see one if you're out and about, either in a developed area or a more rural setting. But it's the central part of the state where we have relatively few bears. They're around, but they're not nearly as common as the western and eastern parts of the state.
So these recent bear sightings, they're pretty unusual to see a bear in a, developed area in the central part of the state.
I would say that if we're looking at the sum total of all bear sightings in the central part of the state, it's not unusual for us to have sightings this time of year. But for any one person, you're probably not going to be one of the lucky ones who catches a glimpse of one of these younger bears that are passing through.
In your lifetime, probably not. So let's talk about their nature. Are these bears aggressive towards humans? And can they be, if that's not their general nature?
Yeah, fortunately, the black bears that we have in North Carolina are very different from, the brown bears, or also known as grizzly bears, that you see out in the western part of the country. Our black bears are smaller, and they tend not to view human beings as a potential prey item or food source, other than the fact that human beings tend to be associated with easy sources of food that we intentionally or accidentally leave around our homes and where we live that bears like to get into.
And yeah, and this really goes to these Bearwise basics, this kind of online list that talks about, what you should do and don't do. Not only if you spot a bear, but how not to attract a bear. What are some of the most important things to keep in mind?
Yeah, so at the top of the list of the six Bearwise basics is never feed or approach a bear. They are pretty skittish around human beings and they don't really want to have anything to do with us. But when bears get access to food sources around people, they can start to lose that natural fear. And that's when problems can occur.
And then you have to really think about what's around your home. I mean, everything from food to garbage to bird feeders to pet food, even making sure your grill is cleaned and closed. I mean, are those things that would alert or attract a bear?
Absolutely, absolutely. All of those things that you mentioned are attractive food items for bears. And I think people don't really realize that a single bird feeder that's full to the top with birdseed has enough calories in it to feed a bear for an entire day. So
Oh,
if it
that's a
gets
lot.
to a bird feeder, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to do any more work to find food for that entire day. So that's a really attractive source of food for bears. And they don't read the labels on the bags that say this is just for birds. They're
Sure.
still full of calories, full of fat and protein, and bears will definitely take advantage of a bird feeder if it's available to them.
And another I'm thinking of birds. Bearwise basic is make sure if you do see a bear that you let your neighbors know. So they all need to be on the lookout.
Yes, yes. Managing issues with neighborhood bears really is a community-wide issue. If there's a bear in one person's backyard that got into a bird feeder, that bear is probably going to stick around and look for bird feeders in the neighbors' yards. So communicating when a bear has been sighted, especially when it's gotten into a food source, is a great way to alert neighbors so that those food sources can be removed. And that is really what's going to help the bear realize it needs to move on.
And does the state want to be notified when somebody in the area sees a bear, or is that not necessary unless there's a problem?
Especially in the central part of the state, like the triangle, we're always interested in hearing about bear sightings just so that we can keep a record of how common those sightings are. But that's mostly a matter of record keeping. We want to keep tabs on where people are seeing bears, but it's not a surprise, especially this time of year when people see one, passing through the area. And certainly, we are always interested in hearing when people are experiencing issues because, it's in our best interest and it's our job to help people respond to any wildlife issues. And we have a lot of expertise and information that we can get to people to help them coexist with bears.
But at the end of the day, you might feel compelled to take a picture of a bear, but don't get close. Do not get close to a bear.
Exactly. Take a picture from just how far away the bear already is. Don't get any closer.
Thank you for sharing this important information with us. For more news from WRAL, sign up for the WRAL Morning Briefing newsletter. You'll be informed and ready to face the day with one concise email. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter. Thanks for listening.